it's a pleasure to be here and talk about something that I'm so passionate about, and that's the 6 pillars of the 21st century policing. But I guess the thing that I'm most excited about is that I'm with Chief Phil Smith, who's a great friend and a great advocate for Core Force. We're very fortunate to have him with us today. So, Chief, I'd like you to give a little bit of your background.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again. Thank you for the good folks at Core Force. I have to say hello to my friend Doug, who just came by and took a picture and waved.
Thanks for stopping, Doug.
So my background is a little interesting. One, I didn't start off in a career in law enforcement. My first and previous career was in education. I worked with young children, middle school age and high school age children, which kind of in a lot of ways have been the best training for my law enforcement career and how to deal with conflict resolution. It falls in line with a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. But I've been with the Evansville Police Department since January of 2013. Spent the previous 3 years as assistant chief, and January of last year was appointed chief, so I'm in my second year as chief. So.
You're a very progressive, well-respected chief. You're a leader among chiefs, not only in the state of Indiana, but nationally as well. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us here again today, Chief.
Thank you.
Again, as I mentioned, we're talking about the 6 pillars of the 21st century policing, and the purpose of the 21st century policing model is to enhance the effectiveness of law enforcement agencies in reducing crime, while building trust and ensuring the well-being of officers. And as I said yesterday, it's not mutually exclusive in that enhancing the trust of the community is not coming at the expense of the officers. It is also ensuring their well-being. And it's important not only for the officers' well-being, but it's important to have a healthy community as well, and a healthy community that trusts the officers, that have a partnership. And really the six pillars are about building that partnership. And I'd like to introduce those 6 pillars before we get going. The first one is building trust and legitimacy. The second pillar is policy and oversight. The third is technology and the use of social media. The fourth is community and crime reduction. The fifth is training and education. And the sixth is officer wellness. The 21st century policing was commissioned in 2014 by President Obama, and for those agencies that are employing it, and there are several hundred throughout the country, it really has been transformative for those agencies. And the first pillar, which is building trust and legitimacy, is the foundation for all the other pillars. You simply can't accomplish the other 5 pillars without accomplishing pillar number 1 first. So let's talk about trust and legitimacy and building that within the communities that you police. And I want to first point out, and Chief, I want you to talk about it a little bit as well. We may say that you're the chief of police for the city of Evansville, the community of Evansville, but within your community, you have a number of other communities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a tri-state region, and south of Indianapolis, which is the one city that people outside of Indiana know most, because that's our major city. South of Indianapolis, we're the largest agency, third largest agency in the state overall. So anything south of Indianapolis where a smaller agency may need a SWAT team, a bomb unit, or anything like that, they're calling my agency for those things. So we're responsible to be a good steward and good partner with those agencies as well.
Right. So where I come from in Northwest Indiana, just outside of Chicago, we have a very diverse community, not only geographically, but population-wise as well. And we found that we could not provide police services based on a broad brush approach. We had to provide police services that we cater to the individual communities. Do you find that true in yours as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this all the time. You have to meet people where they are, right? Certain demographics, certain populations of people, certain people with different beliefs, backgrounds, whether they be religious or otherwise, they group and gather in different locations at different events, and we're law enforcement for every last one of those people, right? So one police force with several different groups to be responsible for the safety and security of. So it's very important to be a part of those groups, to reach out to those groups and let them know, extend that olive branch as an agency and say, hey, we're here for you, whatever you need. That's what our job is. That's what our role here.
Right. So that's one aspect of building trust within the communities that you serve. But would you also say that another factor in gaining trust is being completely transparent? And explain how you are transparent and how you utilize Core Force technology to aid in your transparency.
That's a great question. And with Core Force, one of the main tools that we have is the in-car dash camera and the body cam that officers use. Earlier today, I talked about TNT, and I'm not talking about the bomb. I'm talking about trust and transparency. To build those things with the utilization of the body cam and the dash cam car, we're putting those videos out anytime we have incidents, critical incidents, and a lot of times even building on those green dots of when officers are doing good stuff and putting that information out. You're using the core force technology to do that, but you're implementing a foundation principle of that TNT, that trust and transparency, and letting people know what's going on within your agency.
And I appreciate that segue because that feeds right into pillar number 3. We're going to skip 2 for now. We'll come back to that. But pillar number 3 is the use of technology and social media. When we talk about the media traditionally, and I got in law enforcement in 1988, and our media simply was, in my region, the South Bend Tribune, the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, and either the South Bend or the Chicago Media Market would put out a news release about an incident that happened in our jurisdiction. And the news cycle was maybe 10 o'clock that night or the next morning when the Chicago Tribune came out. But now we have instant news, instant gratification. And by utilizing core force technology, you can help to educate the public, be transparent, and help to control that message, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not waiting anymore for the newspaper or even the news anymore. They're going to your social media platforms. They're going to other people's social media platforms to find out what's going on in their community. It's funny that you mentioned 88, the Chicago Tribune. Quick trivia there. Michael Jordan won both Defensive Player of the Year and MVP that year in 88.
In 1988.
And I was 4, so.
And that's when I got my first pair of Air Jordans.
That's great.
Exactly. So pillar number 2, policy and oversight, and this is a great one too, and that's simply ensuring the policies that are in place to guide law enforcement practices and oversight. They have those mechanisms that hold agencies accountable. And I want to mention it while we're here. We've had our friends from Lexipol. They're here. We at Core Force have a partnership with them. They're simply the best when it comes to policies and procedures. But let's talk about Core Force and how we aid the oversight within an agency. We talked yesterday, you in your presentations that you've been doing this week, you've talked about how short your agency is, which is not unique to any other law enforcement agency in the country. But you're having your supervisors they're performing a multitude of tasks, and unfortunately, they can't focus on supervision because they're simultaneously providing the role of patrol officer as well. They're taking those calls for service. But now, and especially with the 21st century policing model, that we need to have oversight. So explain how Core Force technology is helping your agency by use of their technology to oversee the actions of your officers within your jurisdiction.
Yeah, using that technology is kind of a force multiplier for the sergeants or supervisors' ability, their natural abilities, right? They can look in and see using the technology trends and things that are going on with the officers. Even if they physically can't be there because they're taking runs, they can stop at a computer and follow up on their people, right? So it's giving them an opportunity to still do those things even though that we're short. I say this all the time. Good technology is also a good point in retention, right? It's a good place in retention because it helps people prevent burnout when they know that they have tools that can help them do their job. And so, yes, while I am short and I do have supervisors that are taking runs that traditionally wouldn't have, they still get to invest in the person because the technology helps them. Instead of going place to place or run to check on this person, they can actually pull up body cam footage and look at trends of like how fast are they driving, or even report trends like how many uses of force this person may have had, their demeanor on these runs. So it absolutely helps to mitigate the losses that you have in bodies.
How often do you have an administrator within your agency that will hear that a holster sensor has been detected? In other words, through our technology, you're hearing administratively that an officer's pulled his or her pistol from their holster, or you hear body worn down that is indicating that an officer's down, and they can get on their mobile device or their desktop computer, and they can actually they can check in on those officers and see live time what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, and not even just the supervisors. That you mentioned that officer down. Oh my God, that is an incredible feature because that alert goes out to our entire police department. If you're an officer and you have a radio on, you hear that, and you click in. Hey, what's that officer's last known location? Which we now have because of the technology that shows where not only the officer's vehicle is, where the officer's person is. So if they're away from their vehicle and down, I can get out there and find them, and that is fantastic. And unfortunately, we've had to utilize Officer Down in my agency, and I'm just very thankful that our guys have the training to, make that a better outcome than what it could have been had we not had that technology.
Right, and it really is a life insurance policy. Like any life insurance policy, you hope that you don't have to use it, but it's inevitable that you may. But when you need it, boy, is it a nice rescue mechanism to have in place. Let's also talk about community policing and crime reduction, because that's a pillar as well. Let's talk about how you're reducing crime in your community and what you're doing as far as community policing is concerned.
Yes, I call it the green dot, red dot. Kind of mentioned that you have to deposit those green dots with your community. We are not just occupiers in law enforcement, right? It's a partnership with our community, and the only things that law enforcement do is not just arrest. Like we're dads, we're moms, we're coaches. We do all these things in the same community. A lot of us in the communities that we police in, right? So having that community trust and buy-in takes the effort of us getting out of our cars and being involved. And if we're getting out of our cars on our personal time, that's one thing. That gets the people past the uniform. But when we're getting out of our cars while in uniform and on duty, hey, let's document those things. Right. And us as law enforcement leaders, we need to understand that, hey, this is also footage that our community needs to see us be transparent about to help build that trust. So technology has been a huge part of our community policing as well, like our SROs. Almost every community has SROs.
It's a great example. I was going to bring that up. Absolutely.
Yeah. They do great stuff with these kids. Let's put some of that stuff out there.
Right.
And this technology allows you to do it fairly easy. And even if it's a situation where these certain kids don't want to be, well, great, we got something for that too. We got redaction tools. We have something for everything.
Right. Yeah. You've said a couple of points that I really want to emphasize because they're so great. I've talked to several administrators nationwide recently that have said, we've really had to scale back on what we're doing with community policing. And it's kind of a head scratcher because you should be doing more. It doesn't. I understand where they maybe not, they can't afford to have people that are dedicated to a community policing unit. But really, your officers, you're hoping are doing community policing every day. And as you mentioned, the school resource officers or DARE instructors, great instructors, they're doing that community policing every day. And in fact, that was part of President Clinton and President Obama's recommendations for enhancing community policing as well. But even getting out as they're driving past a park and they see kids playing basketball, we see that all the time where officers get out and engage with kids playing in a neighborhood pickup game. That's community policing. Or getting out and walking into a convenience store and talking with the clerk or several customers that may be there. And when they're having coffee at a coffee shop, engaging the public in conversation, that's community policing.
Absolutely. You think of the old Norman Rockwell painting where the officer's reaching over to the kid. That is community policing.
Yeah. And I also like the other point I want to come back to that you brought up as well, and that's your green dot expression. And all too often we turn on the news or see in social media where law enforcement is portrayed because of a officer-involved shooting, a use of force, a pursuit that may end up with an innocent person who's injured or unfortunately killed. But with the use of core force technology, you can utilize that to highlight the good things that officers are doing every single day. And the number of positive interactions that you have, that you release, should outnumber the interactions that may be the result of a use of force 10 to 1. And I like that you're so progressive that you are highlighting your officers that maybe are the first to arrive at a house fire and they kick in a window and rescue the family that's inside, or they rescue a family cat, or they stop at the basketball, at the park and play basketball with kids. I love how you're using that social media to help to build that trust with the community that you're providing services to.
We've been behind the 8 ball in law enforcement. Fire departments have been doing that for years, saving cats and putting it out there. And we wonder why they get all the good press. So hey, we're on to you guys.
Exactly. Pillar number 5 is training and education, and that's providing ongoing training and education for law enforcement personnel to improve their skills and knowledge. And training is another place where it can be challenging because of a lack of manpower, a lack of budget to do training. But sometimes it's as simple as using core force technology in body camera, in-vehicle video to review, to make sure that officers are complying with policy, to make sure that they're doing, that they have safe tactics, and not to use it necessarily punitively, because there's a time and a place for that, but to use it for retraining and education. maybe to point out the things that they're doing right, but maybe to point out things that they don't know that they're doing that could cause a risk to them, their adversary, or other officers as well.
Yeah, so earlier today, one of my SWAT officers and defensive tactics instructor was here on this floor, and he came up and talked about the use of body cam from the officer's perspective. And one of the things he mentioned is that we often go back and look at our video and use it as a training tool, because in my mind, and if I'm training and I say where I have an altercation, heaven forbid, where I have to use, let's say, empty hand strikes, and I, in my mind, say in my paperwork, hey, I struck him twice. But you go back and look at the video, and it's, well, 7 strikes there. You know, sometimes the film don't lie. That's what a lot of coaches say, right? So the film don't lie. And having that ability, using this technology to have that ability to go back and do some course correction with our own selves. You told that great story about yourself, and I take some humility and some transparency on your end. But absolutely, if I go back and look at half the footage that I've done in my career, I know that I can enhance and get better on some things, because now I can look at it and review it. I can slow it down. I can talk it through with my instructors. And I think that's a great thing.
Right. And I know I was on speed dial with our local NAACP chapter in my community, and we had a wonderful relationship. And they'd be the first to admit that the reason that our relationship blossomed was because of the transparency that formerly Utility, now Core Force, provided for us. In that, when they came in, they would actually sit down and review video with us instantaneously or very soon after an incident had happened. And oftentimes they realized that an incident wasn't as it was initially portrayed. Oftentimes we would find that the community would say, you know what, your deputies exercise more patience than what we have and more restraint than what we would have. But occasionally the complaint was right. Yep. There was some basis to it, but it also enabled us to say, we have responsibility here. This isn't our proudest moment, and we're going to pledge that we're going to take this as a learning tool, and we're going to re-educate, and we're not going to do this again. It was like ripping a Band-Aid off. Yeah. You know, initially it hurts, but it also took the wind out of a lot of people's sails, because oftentimes complainants come in and they are very defensive, thinking that you're going to be defensive. But when you immediately come back and say, no, you're right, we were wrong in this incident, it actually takes the wind from them.
Oh, it totally disarms them. A kind word turns away wrath in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and it then ends up not going away, but it's quieted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our sixth pillar and the final pillar of the 21st century policing is officer wellness and safety. And it's important that we prioritize the health and the mental well-being of our deputies and our officers. They're our greatest resource that we have. We have more investment in them than anything else. Talk about how Core Force technology can help you to monitor the wellness and the health of your staff.
Just speaking purely, so most of my agency, just like a lot of everybody's agency, the foundational piece to most of my resources are in my patrol function. Right, because that's the lifeblood of a police department. The activation of the camera itself will let me know, like, is this officer even come to shift tonight? Did your camera even leave its home tonight? If people are having excessive absences, like, hey, what's going on? Is there something we can help you with? If people are having excessive speed alerts, those are those early warning things that we get as commanders to let us know that we could be looking at it. It could be absolutely nothing. It could be just some good police work, and you have an active officers getting into stuff, because we all have that too. But it gives you that opportunity to take a pause and then touch base with your people. Just say, hey, everything going all right? Cool. I noticed you've been getting involved in a lot of stuff. How you feeling? You know, do you want to talk to somebody, or are we good? Or are you just out here tearing it up? You know, and so those conversations can happen because of the technology will alert the supervisors that those kind of things are going on. And I think that's phenomenal. Those are things that, you know, beforehand, we would just have to have a supervisor that was very vigilant and listening on the radio, or just driving around to make sure they're showing up to where their officers are being dispatched to. Right. You know, that's a lot of, that's resources in gasoline that you're saving now. You know, that's human resources and like burnout that you're saving. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that technology helps in the way of just helping our people, being there for them. It does it for us.
Right, and I think you'd also agree that when you have a supervisor that actually shows up on scene, the officer's behavior is going to immediately improve, right? But through the use of Core Force technology, you can get a glimpse into what's going on with an officer on the scene that's actually dealing with the public. Of course they know, but without having a supervisor physically there on scene, they're more likely to show signs that maybe they're troubled in one way or another. Yeah. So in wrapping this up, a couple of key points, and one thing I think that is very important, especially at a time where funding is very, very difficult. I should mention that Core Force, we are endorsed by the NAACP. And I think when administrations and agencies go in and they're asking for funding, and they say that Core Force technology is going to help us to accomplish the 6 pillars of the 21st century policing model. And this is one of our goals, and it's our mission to adhere to that. And because it's going to improve our relations, it's going to improve the services that we provide, that the funding arms are much more likely, and groups that may be on the periphery of supporting law enforcement will stand side by side because they know that it's going to improve their communities as well. But I also want to point out for those agencies that are currently adhering to the 6 pillars, that just because you now are adhering to the pillars doesn't mean that it's not a continual work in progress. It takes constant work and vigilance to make sure that all of your officers, everybody shares in the same missions and goals, but it's important that the community knows that you're trying to accomplish these goals each and every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you said a mouthful there, especially if there's anybody out here under the sound of my voice that is looking for a new alternative, something that's user-friendly, because like I said, I'm not the most tech-savvy guy. If you want something, and you maybe budgetary concerns may be your concern, one, anything that's worth it's going to cost a little something, right? Because it's worth it. But you guys have been great here at Core Force of managing what our costs are versus what our needs are, and kind of meeting us in the middle there. But I would encourage any administrator here that has that hurdle. If you have a demo, bring your mayor to this demo and let them see the product. Bring your city managers, bring your city council, invite them to these demos so that they can see how this can benefit their community. You said it earlier, having a community that has input with you on the technology as well. I mean, that can go a long way. And if you got the decision makers there, the people with the checkbooks,
yep,
that's huge.
Remember the term that we talked about yesterday, the cooperative triangle?
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, community, police, and community leaders.
Yes.
All together, they have an equal share and responsibility here. Chief, I want to thank you for joining us today and being up here. You are a great friend, a very strong advocate, and we appreciate the partnership that we have with you and the Evansville Police Department. Please stay safe.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
You're welcome.